What are you reviewing today?
Oh, it's not a review, although this is a pretty good atlas, the Firefly Great World
You use
Atlas.
it a lot.
What was that?
You use it a lot.
I do use it a lot. It's not as though I just, like browse through it or it sits on a coffee table or whatever, or on a shelf or whatever. I refer to it a lot. I particularly like it because it's got a very good map. It's hard to get good maps of just basically Turkey and Transcaucasia, and so I'm not really showing it. But yeah, there's Turkey. It's got a good two-page spread. Turkey and Transcaucasia and stuff like that. Very hard. So, some atlases don't really have a proper, like family atlases or whatever. You'll run across specialized atlases, especially at university libraries. It'll be just about Turkey or whatever. But it's hard with some of these regular atlases to get proper coverage. This is a country of I think over 80 million people nowadays. It's much bigger in terms of land size than Germany, which is I think it might be the biggest country in terms of land size in Western Europe, and in terms of population, it is as well. So, like people misunderstand Turkey. I was asking someone with a PhD. It's in English, but I expect people to know a little bit about things other than their specialty. What's the population of Turkey nowadays? Oh, 35 million. Say what? Maybe when he was a kid. But, yeah, he's old enough to know better. So 80 million. I mean, there might be as many people in Istanbul, which is in Europe, as there are Istanbul and surrounding areas there are in all of Scandinavia. So it's the most populous Istanbul. Is the most populous, apparently, the most populous city in all of Europe. So, like 15, 20 million. It probably depends on, where you count the boundaries and stuff like that. Anyway, it's stunning. People don't understand these sorts of things, so on and so forth. Do you have anything you wanted to talk about?
Well, I guess I can talk about the tomato measuring that I'm doing.
Okay.
So I'm weighing out my tomato harvest and James's tomato harvest. And I think today is September 6th, but I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. And he didn't get very many tomatoes today in his harvest. He got 11.1 ounces.
But still, there were some nice looking tomatoes.
There were some nice looking tomatoes.
Very nice.
So, now with these, I'm just going to turn this off. That's because my finger was on it. It confused me.
It confused it or you?
I was doing a lot of work and I was tired when I started this.
Bad sleep last night?
Oh, it's okay. But most people, when they're growing their own tomatoes, and this is James's first tomato garden himself, and when they're growing their own tomatoes, they take the first tomatoes off the plant that ripen and save the seeds. That's tradition. And I don't know why that is, because if you save any of the seeds and grow them, they will all produce tomatoes. But this is something that I think everyone does this. Everyone who grows tomatoes, they're going to collect from their first tomatoes. I don't know why. I think it has something to do with, what do you call it, primogeniture or something?
Could be.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
But, because really you can save from any. But, this is kind of cool. This one was a different kind of plant. I can't remember what the name of that tomato was. But it doesn't really matter. Because what happened is over the years, I have, this tomato would have been the grandparents, great-grandparents, whatever.
What is that?
Anyway, they would have been, I think, the same. These would have been related, but this parent looks more like a parent I remember from years and years ago. Whereas this one doesn't look like anyone I've grown. But, I mean, this plant is producing ones that look like this, and they have a darkish top like these ones that have the star symbol on the top. So I call them Starry Night, but I don't know what they would be called. But they don't have a star really. Like this one has more of a Star of David on the top. But anyway, they're lovely, and they look a little bit Cherokee-ish. So I think somehow there was a Cherokee parent in here somewhere, but not very much.
So what you're saying is they've
looking a bit
hybridized
pink.
right out almost in the wild, right?
Yeah,
They've
well,
crossbred?
that's the thing. When you get my seeds, what I wanted to do is put "Mama looks like this" on my seed packages and put a picture of the parent plant that I'm getting the parent tomato that I'm getting the seeds off. Because honestly, I like to mix them. I like putting different ones near each other and see what comes out. I like the whole process of hybridization. And with things like tomatoes and squash, which I also love growing, they hybridize really well. They love doing it. So if you put different plants near each other, anywhere near each other, you're going to end up with offspring that don't look quite like the parent plants, and sometimes not at all like them. Like this guy. This plant is producing some interesting tomatoes. We'll see if James likes to eat them. I don't know. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, right? But that's why, like, I'll save seeds for years. And this year, I was growing plants from 2016 parents. And I oversowed my flats in the spring because I didn't expect them to all come up, and they all came up. So I had a lot of tomatoes. But it's good to keep some like staggered, like so that you end up with something like this, right? Where this is quite like a parent that I remember from years ago. And just in case this doesn't work out, it might taste great, it might taste terrible. I don't know. But then I still have some that look like that. So I have saved some seeds from anyway. I hope you know what I'm talking about. Pretty tired. But that's all I wanted to talk about, I guess, was James's plants.
Did we hear anything on the CBC that was
No.
particularly offensive?
No.
It's
And I
almost
didn't
always
make
offensive.
James a Waldorf salad today because he didn't eat yesterday's one. So today
It's just
he's gonna
that's
do
the way. Well, I will be
cucumber
eating it.
sandwich.
Right? Just,
I threw it out.
okay.
I threw it in the yard.
Okay. I was afraid there was mayonnaise on it. I just left it
Doesn't matter.
too long, and I was
gone.
afraid the eggs would, mayonnaise would poison me. I've been told that
When
my
you have a
immune system-
craving for this salad, I will make it for you and you will eat it.
So how much time is left?
You have 20 minutes if you want to talk.
Good.
You want to talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Go for her. I'm just going to eat. And I'm going to put tomatoes away. And we got to start eating a lot more tomatoes because they're starting to pile up. Even when we just have a little tomato harvest for a day,
Yeah, no problem.
James is 11 point, but we both have them coming in now, and yeah.
Well, there's no problem as far as I'm concerned. I
Okay.
love tomatoes. I've always been a tomato fancier. No, I haven't been growing them. I'm going to talk a little bit about post-colonialism, late capitalism, and neo-imperialism. A bunch of garbage, jibber-jabber. It's been coming down the pike. Ever since I was a kid, really. We don't live in a post-colonial era. Colonialism, in other words, colonizing, is going on in the West, not by the West. The West is being colonized by people from elsewhere. Some are very nice. Some are a boon. Two examples. The guy who handled my last stem cell therapy. coordinator. He's from Mexico. Originally from Spain, but he came via Mexico. Helped me to strive. Had some skills. I didn't care for him as a person that much, but that doesn't really matter. It's always going to be that way. You run into some people who fit into society and they might rub you the wrong way. So it goes. Another example. So he's, I'm really glad to have someone from Mexico here. Not just in Canada, Alberta. Another example. The woman who's handling my most recent treatment. Her name's Gazella. First name means gazelle. I analyzed that for her. Of course, she knew it only too well. She's a very well-educated person. Where's she from? It's an Arabic name. All her names are Arabic. Shoji Rizavi, last name. She comes from Iran, from Mashhad, second biggest city in Iran, way off in the northeast, almost in Turkmenistan. So she knows, of course, Farsi, or Persian, whatever you want to call it, official language of Iran. She says, and I believe her, that she picked up Turkmen because she had a lot of patients who were, back in the day, back in Mashhad, who were Turkmen. So Turkmenistan's to the north, but you know, there's kind of like spillover across borders in that part of the world. Many parts of the world, most parts of the world, really. Well, that's impressive. Turkmen is, Farsi is an Indo-European language related to English, very distantly, but Turkmen is a Turkic kind of language, and it's not close related, if at all, to Farsi. So that's a step. Then for a while she lived and worked in Italy, and she'd have to learn Italian. That's impressive. So she can live and work in 3 languages, and then she came over to Canada. I think that was the next step, and hopefully it's her last step. I hope she doesn't go anywhere else. But she's learned English pretty darn well. So someone was telling me, she confirmed it, that she'd taken something like 14 years of education. Pretty impressive. It helped me stay alive. That's someone that we want in Canada. Comes from a Muslim society, one that right now is extremely conservative, dominated by the Ayatollahs. But she seems to, I'm not going to say she's secular, I don't want to presume, but she's not dressed up in bulky clothing and with a head covered and all this kind of stuff. Hey, she's a woman, and she's got a job. So she's a Muslim practice. She doesn't look as though she's a fundamentalist. Kind of person we all basically benefit from having in our society. It's awesome. So I don't mind being colonized by people like that. I don't want to be imperialized by anyone. There are many people coming here from various parts of the world that kind of wouldn't mind imperializing us. Many people, for example, from the Muslim world. Because that's basically is part of the plan. I call it a secret. The plan is not that secret. It is a secret. It's an open secret. All you got to do is read the various religious documents to know exactly what's intended for the world. You also only have to look at the places where this religion is dominating, and in some cases still dominant, to realize that what might be good for that religion is not necessarily, I can say pretty well categorically, is not good for the world. It's just that way. As the Bible said, understand now, I'm agnostic. I was raised on by their fruits you shall know them. And so I use that, I apply that to Christians, of course. I also apply it to other religions, other belief systems. You know, you can look at the communists and see the fruits. Rotten fruit, stuff like that. So here we've got, I'm going to move this a little closer to the camera. Well, hopefully you have this kind of etched into your memory, but most of you wouldn't. It's just the way it is, especially you Fogoshes. So here's Afghanistan. In something like the wider context, not the wider context. You can see here, they don't exactly show it, but it borders on the People's Republic of China, borders on Pakistan, borders on Iran, and borders on Turkmenistan. The woman who takes care of my cancer right now at the hospital here in Lethbridge, she would have lived up in here, Mashhad, pretty close to Afghanistan. I think she was saying she'd been into Herat once, which is right here. And I think she was saying she'd just been there once, and that was the only time she'd been to Afghanistan. I think she'd been saying, she said she'd been into Turkmenistan, maybe more than one. So here we got India. Pakistan is maybe 200 million people. Bangladesh here, 200 million people. I mean, it's stunning. Look at how small it is. I mean, Pakistan's quite small too. India has something like 1.2, 1.4 billion people. Maybe a little bit less after COVID, and the death count is rising even as we speak. We don't know how long it's going to last. But Afghanistan, the Americans, as they're saying on CBC and a variety of other places, they were defeated there. Okay. They retreated there. They lost, what, 2,500 guys there. How many people, so that's in the space of 20 years. How many people did the Americans lose to the Taliban and the flunkies that they were protecting, Al-Qaeda? In one day, less than one day, in the space of a few hours, more, 3,000. 3,000. So, you know, like there are all sorts of folks that say, oh, they'll get in a quagmire, it's like Vietnam. Here's a little news for you idiots. The United States created a quagmire in Vietnam. It was to slow the commies down, and they did it. Have you got that straight? It was a quagmire for everyone. The commies, in the space of less than 8 years, during the Truman administration, took over, this is just like a straw count or something like that. I might be off by one or two or a few, one way or another. 22 countries in 8 years. When they took over part of Vietnam, the northern part of it. But it wasn't until almost exactly 30 years later that they took over South Vietnam. And the Americans learned. They learned that they couldn't trust the commies, that they had to make a stand. Even a guy like Truman, it happened during the Truman administration where there were 22 countries lost to the commies. He eventually, during his second administration, the first one he was elected for, he made a stand. He made a stand in Korea. And that was a tie. Still is a tie. Only when you look in economic terms, the commies are losing. They're roughly, I'd say 40 times behind, we'll say 20 times behind, economically speaking, the South Koreans in per capita GDP. The Americans have retreated here. They haven't surrendered the United States to the Taliban. They haven't surrendered to Muslim fundamentalists or anything like that. There are certain people who want us to submit to Islam. They've after 1991, after the fall of communism, they've been looking around and saying, who are we going to be fellow travelers for? Who are we going to be Sputniks for? Who are we going to be useful idiots for? And they've decided to pump on Islam because it's got a reputation amongst them. I don't know how they dreamed it up, for being tolerant and peaceful and for being enlightened and all these sorts of things. It's not particularly peaceful. It's not particularly tolerant. Fact is, you'd find, I suspect, of all the major belief systems, it's maybe the most intolerant now in the world. There have been times when Christianity's been pretty intolerant, but, you know, to a large extent it's changed its ways. I don't know for how long. I mean, religions can always have fundamentalist relapses and things like that. So, what was the other thing? Enlightened? It's not terribly enlightened right now. I mean, there were times when countries ruled by Muslims have been more enlightened, let's say, than Western Europe. But that, for example, modern-day Iraq, present Iraq, about 800 AD, that was more enlightened than Europe. But the rulers then, particularly Ma'mun, however you pronounce his name, I'm badly mispronouncing it. He was trying to bring in Persian values again, as opposed to Arabic values. And of course, by the Muslims will say, "See, look at him." But then, when behind your back, they'll say, "Look at how enlightened he was. Look at that." But behind your back, when you're not realizing, they call him Prince of the Infidels. And then they'll say, there's only been one real inquisition in Islam, and it was carried out by him against Muslims. His little movement didn't work out, and ever since then, it's been pretty well a downward trend for Islam in terms of enlightenment. So, there you go. Anyway, the Americans have retreated here, and they'd better understand that dudes will become looking for them. The Taliban, whoever, ISIS, so on and so forth, their reach, their ambitions are worldwide. They're here to force everyone in the world, that includes you Fogoshes, to submit, to surrender, to become Muslims. That's what they're here for, and they'll be coming looking for you, okay? Anyway, so here we've got them. Who's supporting them? How did they beat the United States, according to you Fogoshes? How did they force them into retreat, according to me? Well, you know, like, there was a guy being interviewed on CBC a couple of days back, and he was a journalist, as I recall. Don't hold that against him. I try not to hold that against anyone. I used to be a journalist, you know, at a student newspaper. And the guy mentioned, the interview asked, well, who's supporting them? You know, can they exist by themselves? Oh, no. So the guy mentioned Pakistan. And really, okay, Pakistan, you see how it has this big long border, and spilled across it, you know, across it, you've got not so much down here, these are Baluchis, but here you've got Pashtuns, okay? And Pashtuns aren't really the majority in Afghanistan. They're a large minority, okay? Right here. And I don't think they're even the plurality. I think people located in here, Iran, they're kind of like Iranians. Not strictly speaking Persian, but Iranians. they might be the plurality of people. Maybe even, I don't think they'd be the majority. And you've got people who are Hazaras here. You know, you've got Turkmen up here. You've got Uzbeks up here. You've got Tajiks who are kind of closer to being Persian than the Iranians are here. They're related to the Iranians. I'm talking about in terms of linguistics and linguistic categories and ethnicities. Strictly speaking, we call this Iran. But it's when it comes to languages and ethnicity, the Iranian is a larger group than Persian. Okay? The people and the language that dominate in present-day Iran. So you got the Tajiks here. I think the language, the Persian language they speak here, is called Dari, but apparently it's fairly similar. Tajikistan is strictly speaking up here in former Soviet Central Asia. So yeah. Really, the Taliban represent the Pashtuns. You'll find representatives in these other ethnic groups and stuff like that. The only group holding out against the Taliban right now, apparently, is the Tajiks in the Panjshir Valley here, northeast of Kabul. So what Pakistan has been doing, and they've been doing it since after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, they've had fantasies. Imperial fantasies, actually, about controlling Afghanistan and controlling Turkmenistan, these various Muslim countries up here. Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and way up north, a quite large entity, Kazakhstan. So when people are saying, oh, the Americans are getting into Afghanistan, and this is after 9/11, forgetting, of course, that the Americans are a little bit annoyed about losing 3,000 people and the Twin Towers. They're getting in there for the oil and gas. Well, the oil and gas, actually, in the world is important for pretty well everyone. Newsflash, okay? Everyone. So, yeah, there's some oil and gas in Afghanistan. There's quite a bit of it up in Turkmenistan and in the various former Soviet republics. And Pakistan is interested in these sorts of things, you see. And so this is neo-imperialism, okay? Just because Pakistan was imperialized along with India and Bangladesh and Burma and so on and so forth by the English up until 1947 doesn't mean that they don't have now imperial fantasies. Okay? Newsflash. Little light bulbs or flash bulbs or whatever should be going off in your head, you fogocious now. Of course, you're suffering from cognitive dissonance. I can't be, they're people of color. Well, people of color, you know, like, this is the third place to invent an empire in the world. Okay? Yeah. People of color, what we call people of color, invented empire. Okay? I study ancient history. The first two were people from Egypt and from Iraq. Okay? Little ABC sort of thing for you fogocious. People of color invented empire. And about the fourth place to invent empires over here. Not Tibet here. China. Okay? You got that? Yeah. I mean, the English really didn't invent empire for themselves until about 1600 AD. Okay? 1600 AD. Are we out of film?
No, I don't know.
Anyway, if we run out of battery, we'll just cover this again.
Yeah, you're done.
Okay, there we go. We'll do it again.